Hello there and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Daniel Malinowski, and this week we are going to talk about law, artificial intelligence, and one's career path. So how to always keep on growing and developing, always be focused on what's the next step, but also how the legal landscape and the role of a legal professional is changing and whether it is actually threatened by artificial intelligence or not. And last but not least, we'll reminisce a bit on how our respective careers went on to this date. So my guest today is Aleksander Janiszewski. He is the General Counsel of Triple Dot Studios. Alek, welcome. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Hi, all.
Well, it's an enormous pleasure to have you, so thank you so much for coming. Well, I suppose so. Let's start from the beginning, really. So, for our viewers and also, I suppose for the benefit of some of your, former or current clients, colleagues, perhaps tell us about your, the beginning of your journey, how you started, and how does one really, go from a person who started his or her law degree to a guy who is qualified in multiple jurisdictions and has all this fantastic experience in various fields of professional legal advice as you have. So
I think it all really starts with curiosity and ambition. Mm-hmm. It starts on very personal level, and this curiosity and ambition can take you various places. For me, it took me to the US because I thought to myself, well, if I embark on practicing law, what would be the best place to do it, the best market, the most sophisticated market? Mm-hmm. And US was the choice. So long story short, I graduated from law school in the US and really started my career in earnest in the US. And I started off with the firm White Shoe Law Firm, a premier law firm in New York, Simpson Thacher, where I was learning how to become a lawyer and learn something about financing world, because that was my first skill set that I needed to develop. And I spent 5 wonderful years in New York learning the business of law, learning what financing is about, working on transactions that you could read in Wall Street Journal. So it was a phenomenal experience on all levels. And after that, I always had this inkling, what's the next step? Where do I go? Where do I go from here? The curiosity and ambition never really...
It never stops, does it?
Never stops, never really leaves you. So next step was, given my background, being from Poland, being from Europe, I thought, well, why don't I try London?
So first Wall Street, then switch to the city, try something different, but it's ultimately the same. It's a different side of the same coin, really.
Yeah, a bit of it. So I moved to London. I moved with a different firm, but continued working in transactional work, really in financings. And London was a whole new experience on every single level, mostly on cultural level as well. There's a huge difference between how business is run in the US, how business is run in the UK, how people approach it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even though I continued to working at a US law firm. I went to Paul Weiss, London office of Paul Weiss. And I had this adventure in London.
How long have you been to London?
Almost 3 years. Okay. Along the way, of course, I got qualified in all the jurisdictions that I was passing through. So I first got admitted in New York, moved to London. I got admitted in England and Wales, and had my London spell. And to be honest, it wasn't all what I hoped for.
So London, you mean?
London, yeah.
Okay. So definitely you preferred the US, your Wall Street experience, and London, you had certain expectations, but it wasn't quite that. I mean, also the sort of the duration of your, let's call it the service in London, 3 years versus 5 years on Wall Street.
Yeah.
It's kind of telling. And then you went straight to Poland, or?
And then I moved back to Poland, which is my home country and where I'm coming from. It was a sort of natural next step for me for both personal reasons and even professional reasons.
I mean, I completely understand that because I've been exactly the same place, so fair enough.
Right, we've done the same path, and I joined the firm that we both worked at some point, Greenberg Traurig, and started my my legal adventure in Poland. Also getting admitted in Poland along the way, and I ultimately made it a partner at Greenberg Traurig in the finance department. But along the way, I was trying to reinvent myself and develop new skills, new work. I always sort of stayed within the realm of financing. I started off really with debt, and throughout the time, I built up my skill set towards the equity side of financing. In the private markets, of course, I wasn't capital markets lawyers, but venture capital financing effectively and venture capital work. So I developed that skill set and practice along the way. And I was at Greenberg Traurig for almost 9 years, and just recently, in March this year, I moved on again. This itch. What's the next step? What is my next move? Where is my next move? Where am I going to continue growing? When am I going to?
Because if you stay in one place, you die. That's it. I think we're on the same page. We feel that sort of urge to, constantly, develop.
Totally, you gotta develop. It's a changing world. You either embrace change or you're gone.
Yeah.
So you gotta learn how to feel comfortable with uncomfortable. You gotta learn how to feel comfortable with the change. You got to project your change. It cannot happen by accident.
No, you have to come prepared, obviously.
You have to become prepared. And having said that, I wanted to try something else for a whole host of reasons. We can talk about them later. But I moved in-house and started with Triple Dot Studios, which is a mobile games company out of London, as a general counsel, and I've been in that position since March this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you kind of preempted my next question. So essentially, you've been for a few months now at Triple Dot. So how are you finding it and all that sort of stuff? We'll obviously, talk about in a second. I'm sure you can very well imagine that there must be heaps of lawyers who are watching us, people perhaps a bit more junior, perhaps at my level, so associate level, who are thinking, they're there in private practice, they've been there for, a few years, let's say, and, this sort of impression that there is this interesting adventure that awaits on the other side of the mirror in-house, or an interesting adventure from the client side, or even something that will be a valuable experience, for, then to be utilized, to come back, to private practice. There are all these people who are thinking about this sort of comparison. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about, Triple Dot, how you found your transition, and also what was it that you were not really expecting, and what really kind of came as a surprise, or all these things. There's all the interesting bits that come with the territory.
A lot of questions wrapped into one question. A lot of things to unpack. So let's try to take it, step by step. And I think you first need to acknowledge there's a different world out there. We like to stay within what we do, within the environment that's friendly, that's known to us. And when somebody goes into a law firm and they've been doing this for quite some time, there's a high likelihood that they'll continue on this path, and they may develop their career within the law firm. And particularly in Poland, the in-house career is not an obvious choice, just because we're not a legal-driven society, not law-driven market, and the business's approach to legal function is also different. They hire in-house for somewhat different reasons. So it's a little tricky. I work for really an international firm that happens to be out of London, but again, if it all starts with realization. There's a different world and different path. Typically, if you look, for example, at the U.S. market, you always have different avenues, and people go to a law firm and they start a career at the law firm, and they work at a law firm. If they don't choose the path of a partner and trying to make it in the legal profession at a law firm, they typically work at a law firm until they pay off their debt from the law school, which is a very significant debt. And they build some experience. And after the law firm, they all choose something different. If they have a calling, they typically move on the public side and try to contribute in a meaningful world, in a meaningful way, becoming prosecutors, working for government, schools, etc., 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 etc. Some folks who don't want the law firm environment, which, let's be honest, it's not a cuddly place to be. It's fairly extreme. Any service business is extreme, but within this service business, that's really harsh environment. So some people opt to go in-house, and you typically need 5-6 years of professional experience before you can move in-house, because when you go in-house, in my opinion, you're predominantly being hired for your judgment. And judgment is something that comes experience and maturity. It's not as much about being a subject matter expert, which you always work on and you always develop the skill set, but it's about the judgment, and judgment comes with time. And you go into a role where you work someone differently, you manage outside people, you manage relationships with the law firms, your view on how you practice and why you practice is very different. So you got to have that. It's few years, and then you can consider yourself to be ripe for moving in-house. So that's sort of a traditional path for me. I didn't really follow this traditional path because I went the law firm path, made it to the law firm, made it a partner, and wrapped it up. But yet, at some point decided to go in-house. As with most things in life, it's a combination of things. To me, it was just an opportunity I didn't want to pass on. And I joined Triple Dot with the mission of really developing the legal function within the business. That's my job description. Of course, I have to put out fires on a daily basis, but the goal is to build that function and get the company future-proof, however you define the future. Either as an exit, it's a business that's really being run for exit, IPO or sale or. Do
you mind me asking? Sorry to interject. So how many people are there? I believe it's 2017, 2018 when the company started. So perhaps tell us a bit more about the company as well.
About the Triple Dot itself, right now we are slightly over 500 people. At a very, very fast trajectory, very fast growth. If you look us up, you'll probably find some headings that we won all kind of awards for the fastest growing tech company in Europe, including by Financial Times for the last year. So the business is on the upswing, and it's doing very well. It's a mobiles game company, as I said. We make casual games. which are, for the most part, monetized through in-app advertising. So they're free to play, they're casual games, so they're not for your hardcore gamer.
So casual, sort of like on the bus when you commute kind of thing, you know, 5 minutes here, there, nothing that you commit to for a longer
Exactly. And it's an entertainment business. It's a company with phenomenal people, absolutely phenomenal people. Some industry titans that got together and decided to make it a business. And I'll be probably going back to this theme of it being a business, because there's a lot of misconceptions around gaming to the outsiders and the people that don't know industry, including myself. You know, when I embarked and moved from being a partner at a law firm, I went into
sort of perception.
Gaming.
Such as?
I think there's a lot. First one is people don't realize the scale.
Okay.
And it's part of an entertainment business, which is the largest of them all. It's larger than movie, larger than music, larger than literature, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a huge business. I think another misconception that a lot of people may have is that it's a business that's driven by one-hit wonders or even hits. You know, people sort of look at it and think to themselves and use the analogies to say a movie. You know, when you produce a movie, you don't know what it's going to turn out. It may be a flop, maybe an extreme success. I don't think George Lucas, before Star Wars, could have conceived what it's going to turn into, right? And it's oftentimes with the games as well. Their titles will come up, and there can be a studio, and they'll have one game, and it's going to be extremely successful, but that's it. And that's really one approach. Triple Dot's approach is a little different. We do it in a more structured, organized way, and business-minded and business-oriented. So it's a business organization. And again, going to those differences and misconceptions, you know, people may associate the path to gaming or the gaming companies with people who are hardcore gamers, and they started their businesses because they had a game. It all started with the product. They were gamers. They built the game, and the game at some point became a business. And that's a sort of one way to do it. But I wouldn't say it was Triple Dot's way to do it. Don't get me wrong. We are passionate about games. We're passionate about gamers and our users. But it's a business where games are a medium to run your business. And another thing which I sort of found to be misunderstood, at least by me to a large extent, that it's not only about gaming. Gaming is only a part of it. In particular, if your games are monetized through advertising. You have different ways to monetize your products. You can monetize them through ads, and they're free to play. You can monetize them by
freemium,
in-app purchases where people just buy. You can monetize them by selling them a game, for a console, for example, that sort of thing. But in this little corner of the gaming business that I found myself in, it's really an advertising business where game is a platform for
a mean for advertisements,
right.
essentially.
And in the same way, you can look at TV, for example.
Yeah,
right?
TV ads between movies and stuff. Yeah,
the business that's the business part of it. They make money of selling advertising space.
Yeah,
and everything else is there to serve it. So people turn on the TV, stay glued to the TV, and will watch the ad. And you may be thinking all the stars and everything else that's relevant. That's all nice and good, But in the end, they're there for a reason. They're there for a reason, to sell ad, right? To sell ad space. Unless you have a different model like subscription and have a Netflix and you produce and sell. So that was a sort of also interesting thing to learn, observe and understand.
No, because it's. I was also thinking, because you touched upon this, that at some point you felt that you still need to grow, even though you admittedly you came a long way and you had an illustrious sort of experience and went through the ranks of elite US law firms in different offices. And at some point you've mentioned that you saw Triple Dots and it was an opportunity you did not want to miss.
Right.
So what was that sort of rationale, considering the fact that you started at this sort of corporate financy spectrum of legal services to go into this particular business? Was it the sort of tech aspect of it, the sort of the broader scope of different work that you would do as an in-house counsel? What was it for you?
Again, it's a combination of many things and strategic views. One has and a strategic decision one makes about a career at some point in time. And I had my sort of personal reasons why I wanted to make the change, and part of it is the curiosity, ambition, and the growth, and doing the new things, and continuing learning, and not staying on the gravy train forever, and sort of clipping the coupons to the extent you can clip any coupons. But on the business side, I just took the view that it's a better business. You as an individual have capital in the form of your time, for the most part, unless you're investing real money. But each one of us has capital in the form of time. And you want to deploy your capital in a way
efficient way,
that's going to yield you the best results. And you have to be sort of mindful there are different legal markets, and legal business is a different thing in different places. So it might not be universal for everybody. It's a great business with good margins in the US. It's a good business in the UK. The rest of the world, probably, not. Depends. It can be, not necessarily has to be. And we can talk later about it, but there's changes on the horizon that will flip this entire service business upside down. Any service business, including the legal business.
No, of course, we'll definitely get to that. But just to kind of go a bit layer deeper.
Go layer deeper, and going back, and I'll yield the floor in just a second. You can follow up. But I just took the view that from my business perspective, this is a more future-proof, better place to be. And it also, allows me to go back international legal markets and learn the business side. There's plenty of things, but the essential, to wrap up this point, it's, in my opinion, better business to be in.
That's fair enough. So in terms of going deeper on that specific point, so this business, so when you got there, completely different setup. It's not private practice anymore. You are now, you can say a support function as opposed to a fee earner.
Right.
Fair to say. And so you had to switch to that. So what were the challenges that you faced, and were there any notable sort of fires you had to put out since you joined, or any particularly noteworthy projects that you worked on, particularly from the perspective of these differences from your private practice experience?
Changes are aplenty, and as you said, one day you are a revenue generator, at your firm, at a law firm. You make money. The next day, you're a cost center. You cost money. Of course, hopefully you provide value to the business, but in the end, you're a cost function. So that's a big change, and a lot of things follow from that change. You also need to sort of have a mental shift, because we all have the tendency to think about what we do and who we are as important and overly important, probably assign more value to it than there is. And if you're at the law firm, your view of the world and your perception is law is the most important thing in the world, right?
It can be that, yes, from my experience, from speaking to colleagues and people on the other side. Yes, it can be that. It's to me, it's never been like this, and I always, between you and I and the viewers, I always found it quite funny. But I accept that it can be like this.
That's at least the lenses through which you look, and you go to a business, and it's a little different.
You learn your place.
You sort of learn your place, and you have to balance, find the right balance, and understand where you fit, where you are. And by the way, people on the business side are equally guilty of the same perception. It's just in the different sort of lines of business. People in product will think they are the most important part of the business. People in finance will think they are the most important part. The HR, everybody just have this perception. But if you are at a law firm, and the law firm, that's really it. That's the core. So that's the line.
It's the lawyers who keep the light bulbs alight.
Exactly.
And water running.
At a business, it's a little different, and you have to understand your role. You understand why you're there, and how you can contribute, and what's this legal function is really about. So it's a big change, big mental shift, and I would say I always thought of myself as business savvy and understanding my clients and understanding the business. But it's one thing to see it, and the other thing to do it.
So it tested you.
It tests
despite the years of experience.
It of course it tests you. It tests you in every single way. So that's one of the changes you have to digest and figure out and understand. And for me personally, there was also a big change, because I came from a position where I had my team, a lot of people doing a lot of things together.
A structure in place.
And I was sort of more in the managerial role, and maybe in my day-to-day work wasn't doing the minutia. And you go to an organization that's growing, that's successful, but that's just growing its legal department. And I was the first person on board.
First member, effectively.
Yeah, first. So it means the traditional, or one of the traditional arguments for people going in-house is, I'm going to change my lifestyle for a better lifestyle.
Will you though?
Be careful what you wish for. Because to me, it's rolling up the sleeves and doing things I probably did last time 20 years ago, like looking at NDAs, for example.
Because there's just you, and you either have to, it's either you doing it, or you'll have to be sent outside.
Sent outside, or more frankly, sometimes not being done at all.
Or a business person will do it, because I've seen situations like this as well. The business guy, NDAs being one example. They'll be just saying, well, we've got this template, just use this template, and obviously there are all these considerations, because the template might not be the right template, that sort of thing.
So
but let's park that.
It's a lot about rolling up your sleeves again and start thinking, and try not to be really overwhelmed by the next daily problem, the next daily event. You have to deal with them, but at the same time, you got to be on the lookout for a strategy and really trying to do the job for which you're being hired. And as I said, in my case, its strategy, growing the business, and making the business future-proof for whatever the future for us is.
Whatever the exit strategy,
Exactly.
for example, might be, or long-term plan.
Exactly, and there I was, fairly comfortable with a large team, and here I am, still happy, still comfortable, but on my own, really.
Okay.
Rolling up my sleeves, like special forces behind the enemy lines, so to speak.
So it's guerrilla warfare now, as opposed to proper structured fronts with logistics. That's pretty.
It's a guerrilla warfare all the way.
Okay, so and you've done it for 6 months?
March 1st, I started.
So a few months now.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the same question, I suppose, any particular notable, noteworthy fires or interesting or funny situations that you had to encounter? Because obviously, it's, as you said, it's a growing organization, so not everything is in sort of structured and in its place, and it's a process. So anything of that sort?
Yes, of course. I would say my first week was pretty eventful. As you know, we can't really talk about what we do at work, so it's a little tricky. But
obviously, to the extent you can, yeah. Of course.
SVB in the first week was
really
the issue that I had to deal with.
Done.
Yeah. Hopefully that got sorted out pretty well, and I think also going or actually sort of merging the previous question and really this question. You deal with a whole bunch of issues with which you've never dealt with in terms of your specialty.
Like people coming from different avenues of business to you, being like, I've got this problem, can you sort it out because you are the lawyer?
Exactly. When you are a law firm and you make it to sort of position that we were both at, you do one thing.
Yeah. Or a set of, it's like a box, almost. You just do that and it's predictable to a degree and you're comfortable with it.
You're comfortable with it and you've been doing this for many years, so you know it inside out.
Yeah.
You arrive at a business like I did, you suddenly do everything.
Or you're at least expected to do everything, and there's no one else that you can delegate it to. As you mentioned, there's no team you can kind of offload or delegate certain tasks.
So you need to learn how to, I've said it before, you need to learn how to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And you need to be pretty good at acquiring new skills on the go. Because the variety of issues coming at you from every single direction is going to be
awesome.
So
in terms of your experience now, when it comes to the sort of your business shoes, is there anything that in particular you would want to share or recommend with some of our viewers who are watching, who are perhaps entrepreneurs themselves or have their own business and they are building up, they are scaling up their business and are also concurrently looking to build or expand the legal function of it in-house? Is there anything that any pointers you can give them, anything you want to share in that department?
Absolutely. I think there are few key takeaways. I would say the most important one is to be deliberate.
Okay.
And what I mean through saying deliberate, it's a function within a business. So it should not be accidental, reactive. One should know why they have this function and what the objectives are and what the expectations with respect to these functions are. And that requires being thoughtful and deliberate. So if you start but this feature in your business of having a legal department means you've reached a certain scale, and for some reason you decided you need your lawyer. And the decision is not really as simple as, oh, it's cheaper to do it in-house than offshore. It's just a part of the equation, and sometimes not necessarily very, very true. I think one should look at it a little differently. You have to start with really mapping out the legal element of your business. What does it comprise of, where the risks are, and then tackle these challenges or these projects. That's why you have to be very deliberate. So for example, if you are in a line of business that's consumer facing, you need to think, okay, consumer side of law is going to be something I have to deal with. If you are in regulatory business, or not regulatory business, not because there isn't such a business, but if you're regulated business, say medical, financial, whatever, that's one of the reasons why you do something, and you have to be thoughtful and deliberate about
compliant, it.
Every side of business will deal with issues like corporate or contractual work. You also have to think about it from this perspective. And the reason I say that, just to sort of close the thought and wrap up the point on being deliberate, is unless you really understand what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, you're guessing at best. You're not making intelligent decisions. You're making decisions, but your decisions are simply guesswork. And it shouldn't work that way. If you hire someone and you decide to build a legal function, or you're building a legal function, you should understand why you're doing it and what's the end game of that function is. And it also will mean that there are things which you do not want to do. For example, compliance-wise, but you have to understand why you're not doing it. And it's very important, because business is really a business, and it should focus on business. It should focus on making money. And it's very easy, in particular if you're a startup or
to get distracted, tangled up in the sort of paperwork.
Exactly, distracted, tangled up, not focused, and you'll have your advisors left and right, in-house, outside, telling you, oh, I'm the most important thing in the world, and start focusing on legal.
You lose direction, and then the business suffers, and that's
exactly. You can have a tremendous legal department and very bad business, and it's not going to do you any good. So you need to be thinking from the business perspective, be very thoughtful about and deliberate about the legal function, so we understand and you're in position to make a decision, whether that's where you want to invest time and resources or not. And using what I said, compliance as an example, you can make a decision not to be compliant, but it's good if it's a educated decision and you understand why you're not being compliant and why you made this decision. Because maybe it's just too much resources, you're not at the scale, etc., etc. But it should be a well thought through process. So again, I think being deliberate and understanding the circumstances, the objective, etc., etc. Second one, I would say, is fairly trivial, and it's as simple as being organized. The amount of time one can burn on trying
meetings,
not necessarily in this one, but I mean being organized from the legal perspective, knowing where your documents are, knowing what they are, etc., etc. If you run your business with the intention of raising money in the future or selling your business.
Oh, that can be very crucial, because someone will come in and say to you, well, actually, mate, if you want to float,
Yeah.
There's all this paperwork which you either lost or you should have had,
Yeah.
and it's not there, and you have to, well, address it in one way or the other. So absolutely, completely agree.
So it's a simple thing. Just operate with the notion that somebody at some point in time
We'll come and have a look.
And it's never pleasant exercise, but it can be horrible if you're not prepared. And it's simple. It's just being organized, knowing where your contracts are, knowing where your corporate documents are, keeping track of that. It's very important. I wouldn't underestimate it. It's just so trivial that people don't tend to focus and pay attention on it. But it can break your life on the in-house side. So I would say stay organized.
File stuff properly. Make sure
Exactly.
everything is not just on email somewhere, but actually stored in like one place or whatever.
Exactly, and it will also help you to have a better understanding of where you really are.
Of course.
If it's chaos, you won't even know. So the second one would probably be very simple: stay organized. And a third one, if I were to give a third one, is work with subject matter experts. It's essential that you work with people who are really subject matter experts if you use outside counsel, because they can add real value. And the real value is not necessarily in the legal document itself. It's in knowing what the market is,
Practice, yeah.
what the practice is, etc. If you, using an example, if you grow your business and you want to go out to investors and raise some money, you're not at a scale where you can hire advisor. I didn't want to say investment bank because that's just way off, right? But advisor, you're going to raise money. There's business side to it, but if you've never raised money, who else can tell you
How to do it?
And it's and a good lawyer, good subject matter expert will guide you through the process because they'll understand, they will know. And it's not really the value is not in producing the document. That's just work product. Well, they can tell you how you go about it, what the investor is going to be asking for.
Yeah.
What is it
What do you say? What you should avoid saying, essentially.
Exactly. How much you can give, how much you shouldn't give. I think there's incredible value, and what I found in my practice or in my past experience is that, when you start a business, you will have a lawyer and you'll fail to acknowledge that you've outgrown your lawyer, and one person cannot be all and do it all and help you with everything.
No, of course not. Can be an expert on every single possible matter.
Yeah. So I would say work with the right people because in the end it'll save you a lot of hustle, a lot of money.
Nerves, etc. Yeah.
It's important to realize that, and for an entrepreneur, you have to make a mental switch that you've moved on. Your next scale, next level. You need what was good, at the beginning of your path may not necessarily suit you well.
Yeah.
And you got to build the skill set. And frankly, as a founder or a manager in the business, you cannot be guilty of ignorance and saying, "Oh, that's legal function. I don't have to understand it and know it." And
responsibility doesn't work in that way, does it?
Exactly. The lawyers are going to handle it. You have to be conversant. You're not going to be an expert, but you have to be conversant in the language that you're being talked to
Of course.
sort of realize the value from that conversation. And part of it is knowing who the right people are, where to go, who to use, and really understanding that the game is pretty sophisticated, and you need to be working with the people that do these things day in, day out, because they can add value.
So essentially, just to kind of, my takeaway, from what you said would be that if you are a person who is at the beginning of the journey as a founder, as a person working in a startup, growing the business, they should see, lawyers or a lawyer at the beginning that they would bring on board, not as an additional cost or something that just any lawyer would do. It's all about bringing the right people and understanding that these people, they are there to essentially preempt certain problems, make your life easier, because through the specialist knowledge and experience gained on the market, they'll be able to guide you almost by hand through certain stages and through certain issues you may encounter as a startup founder. Is that fair to say, you reckon?
In the ideal world, yes, that's very fair to say. In practice, you'll have your constraints with money, with time, and resources. But that's I would say the goal for which one you should reach.
Okay, and taking a step back really at this stage, it's it's one of these things that is being talked about these days, day in, day out. Artificial intelligence. So, with your years and years of work as a professional with, top firms, going through the ranks and, seeing how the market, how the law firms themselves, how it all develops. You started in, point A in time, and obviously as you became more experienced and as years went by, also the technology that you worked with changed. You probably, remember times that you worked with Blackberries and stuff. Yeah, which, for me, I started when everyone already in the city had their iPhones, or almost everyone. Now we're talking about various legal, perhaps lower level at this stage, lower level legal tasks that lawyers' work is enhanced through the use of artificial intelligence. What is your take on this? How do you think this whole development will impact the market? Our job security, that sort of stuff. And I'm genuinely curious because obviously I'm in the same boat, So I would rather come in prepared, as we discussed.
It will be a seismic shift.
Okay.
It's going to change everything, to be honest. And I touched upon it sort of briefly when we were talking a few minutes ago, but I don't envy law school graduate today or a junior associate at a law firm, just because their job is not going to exist very soon. And okay. I feel pretty strongly about it. With the advancements in AI, a large chunk of this legal function will be automated, and it will be done through AI.
What's the time frame here, you reckon?
If I knew, but I would say probably with the advancements that this discipline is going through, I would say within 5 years, no more than that. Even today, the AI can draft pretty well, certainly better than a junior associate.
Yeah.
It can research pretty well.
Doesn't do typos.
Certainly better than a junior associate. So it's a huge shift that will completely disrupt service business, including legal business. And I think you will have the people who acknowledge it and work with it, and you'll have people who will disappear. The world's gonna separate the people that use it and then that don't use it, and the people that don't use it will not be there.
Okay, so obvious follow-up question. So how do you sort of put yourself in the best stead to react to this development? I mean, in terms of the way lawyers use artificial intelligence. I went on Lexis UK the other day to just look for some precedents, and the sort of prompt message I received was like, "Oh, dear users, we are, reminding you that we do not consent our materials and our precedents being fed into any external AI sort of tool or machine learning a software." Sending you to the terms and conditions and stuff. Just as a friendly reminder, not that I've done it, but as a friendly reminder, I was like, oh my god, it's already got to this extent,
Yeah, for Lexis, LexisNexis, and products like that, it's a moat they're trying to build to preserve their business, but
of course,
it's surmountable, and this moat is not going to be there very soon, and unless they become their service will make no sense pretty soon. How do you position yourself, or how I position? I looked and try to use all kind of different products right now, because I know it's going to be a huge part of my work, and I'll use it.
So you put your cards on the proficiency, gaining proficiency in using these tools to then do your job.
Yeah, and in the end, the business proposition is always going to win, because if you can optimize the cost through using a tool which will be cheaper than manpower,
you'll just do it.
That's the vector. That's the vector. That's how the force is going to follow, and you will do it. So, in particular, in a situation like myself, I cannot grow the legal department continuously and keep hiring people and doing this and that. So, I have to look how I can use technology to achieve the same results with lesser expense, faster, and that means AI. So I'm looking at tools, I'm trying different tools, and that's why I can tell you right now that some of the things drafted by these tools are pretty good. Pretty good. Of course, the tricky situation or the tricky question is, it will still require a fairly sophisticated end user, because I can tell
to assess.
I can tell with 20 years of experience now. I'm able to tell if the work product is good or not.
Yeah, of course.
Because I had to do it myself, and that's where the problem is going to be with the younger people that go through the profession right now. They just don't understand.
They will not have that experience to. Yeah.
So for now at least, and this problem is probably going to get washed out over time. But for now at least, you will need a sophisticated user who knows how to phrase the question and how to verify the answer and assess it. But still, in terms of the speed, the cost, delivery, it's game changing. It's absolutely game changing, and law is not that difficult and not that unique, and sort of lends itself pretty well to the language models and AI. And people always thought probably the last part of life is going to fall to AI is going to be creative work, and how wrong they were.
Well, if we take another step back and look at, for example, AI-generated art,
that's one
music, videos. I mean, even God.
That's exactly that's what people thought. They will not be replaced for the longest time, because it's creative, it's human, it's creative, and our machine cannot do it.
Well, clearly they can.
Generative AI
Yeah.
can do it very quickly. You type in the prompt and it'll pop up an image,
Yeah.
and it'll change everything. If the computer can do that, I can assure you it can draft an NDA pretty well.
I can very well imagine that's correct. Well, I wish we could end on a more optimistic note, but God, 5 years time. Well, I suppose we'll come back to this discussion, near the time and see how the predictions turns out. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. My guest was Aleksander Janiszewski, my former colleague and the General Counsel of Triple Dot Studios.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
See you guys next week. Take care.